Hello lovelies. Today I'd like to take the opportunity to talk to you about an important but often overlooked question in our little hobby. Why does anyone volunteer to be the referee? The pay is shite, if there is any, usually limited to perhaps subsidised pizza. It takes a lot of effort beyond the time spent at the table, and it can all still go wrong. There's a constant threat that all your carefully laid out ideas are going to be trodden on by your players. So why the merry fuck do as many of us that do choose to step into the role of Games Master? And why don't enough people step into this role? Because clearly it means a lot to some of us, but not enough to others. The Dungeon Master Crisis is the term that has been floating around the TTRPG community for a while now to describe this growing shortage of willing narrators in tabletop role-playing games in general and D&D in particular. D&D has seen a massive resurgence in popularity with its previous edition, as more people have been drawn to these games through live-streamed campaigns, pop culture references, post-pandemic entertainment carrying over what we did during the lockdowns and so on, and a renewed general sort of social interest in group activities, I think. There's been an explosion in player numbers as a result. However, while new players are eager to join games, to play in them and to quantify their OCs, far fewer people are stepping up to run them. And now this is creating a bit of a bottleneck where demand for games far outstrips supply and the number of people willing and able to run them, which in turn seems likely to be a big factor that is driving Wizards of the Coast's dalliance and flirtation with artificial intelligence. Running a game demands a lot from a storyteller. Storytelling for a start. Improvisation, some measure of emotional intelligence, and a deep enough knowledge of the rules to act as an arbiter of them where they interface with the game itself. The time commitment is significant. The forever DM ends up dedicating hours upon hours to planning, session prep, world building, research, drawing up stat blocks, all of that kind of stuff. And all of that can very quickly lead to creative burnout, especially if that effort ends up being wasted. Moreover, expectations are ramping higher and higher as players have become accustomed to polished, character-driven experiences modelled after popular live play shows like Critical Role, of course. Many would-be keepers feel pressured by these high-end and unrealistic standards, or simply don't have the time or the confidence to meet them. And that all contributes to a hesitancy to take on the role. In response, some solutions are emerging. Training resources for would-be game marshals, shared responsibilities between the games master and the players, and even paid chroniclers hosting games, offering professional sessions, which has its own pressures. But without people stepping up, this imbalance may continue to affect the community as a whole, potentially driving some frustrated players away from the hobby altogether, either because they can't find a game to play in or because of unsatisfactory sessions that fail to meet that high bar. Whether you've run a few one-shots or clocked in as the forever DM, if you've ever sat behind that screen, you know that there is something about it, a je ne sais quoi. Nothing else is as satisfying as it. And that keeps you coming back, eager and ready to fulfill that role, and often finding being a mere player deeply unsatisfying and frustrating. I mean, we all know the basics about what is appealing about being a dungeon master. You get to tell a story, to throw a few dice, to camp it up as the villain, make life miserable for your players and have them like it, which certainly appeals to my sadistic side. But if you dig a little bit deeper, there's a whole mess of psychology and even a bit of history behind why certain people love or even need to be the game wardens, and why you should throw your hat into the ring to become one. So, let's dare to be a little bit pretentious and self-aggrandizing, and let's look into the mental side, the psychological side, of why people might sign up to herd a bunch of crack-addled cats into adventures every week. Let's start with one of the biggies, creativity. Ever since we've sat around campfires bullshitting, we've had storytellers to sit around those campfires and to bullshit. From bards to skalds to shaman and lore masters. I mean, the old Norse storytellers would spin yarns of monsters, gods and heroes to entertain, maybe teach a little lesson. Same with the old Greek storytellers. And this would give the people around them a little break from their everyday grind, which was a lot more grinding back then in many ways. Spending your days raping and pillaging will definitely leave you tuckered out and needing a bit of a break. And it also helped create a common mythology, to build community. And let's face it, today being a game director is about as close as you can get in the modern day to that kind of experience without being incredibly lucky. You are sitting around a table creating worlds, coming up with lore, dropping little story seeds that hopefully your players come back for more of. Some of us just are creative types, I guess. Some of us thrive on creating. The act of storytelling isn't just about sharing an idea, it's about bringing a whole other universe to life, using little more than language and imagination. It's pure escapism for both the Hollyhock God and the players. It's a place where you can build a world, play with some archetypes, explore whatever weird ideas your brain can cook up. If you're like me, then maybe some of these ideas come up during the most random parts of your day, or from old and obscure media that hardly anyone else has seen, and you think, ooh, that'd be a nice idea, and you nick it and add it to your own games. Maybe you're halfway through making a sandwich or washing the dishes, and you get this fantastic idea that bubbles up from deep in your subconscious for a villain monologue or a turn of phrase, a mot juste, or a new trap, or a new monster or something, and you can't wait to see how your players will react. It's an addictive feedback loop, it's fulfilling, and it's why so many of us pick up this facilitator's mantle again and again, even to the exclusion of playing. Some of us just aren't happy if we're playing rather than running the games. You get to make and weave a world with your words from your imagination, and it becomes real to an extent, or hyper-real, for the characters at least, as they explore and interact with it. They act, you react, they react to your reaction. Play prompts you to think more, add more details, expand and make more concrete this group hallucination, this spirit quest that you all craft together. Sure, you can build worlds in Minecraft and share them with your fellows, or you can learn level design for computer games with all the coding, textures and everything else that goes into that. But in these games, it's a hell of a lot more accessible. You just need to be able to describe something, and the players need to be able to interpret that description in at least somewhat an accurate manner. And that is available to anyone who can speak or write, use language in any way. And that's near as damn it universal for humanity. And we are storytelling apes. and this is a way to keep that tradition alive, even as reading tails off and off and off as the years go on. The term control freak has some nasty connotations, but hear me out. Being a sensei to the game does give you a sort of controlled power, albeit only over a fictional world of your own creation. You're like a film crew, director, all the rest of it, all rolled into one, but reacting to the constant input of players, who are often prima donnas and refuse to follow the script and prefer to ad-lib all the time. They will absolutely do things you don't expect, which keeps you on your toes and is part of what makes it engaging. Even so, that chance to shape a story and steer it, kind of, where you want, that's a hard thing to pass up. This controlled social environment with bounds and rules is also something that appeals to socially awkward people, ASD people, and it can be a key to unlock improvement in their lives, their ability to cope with social cues and situations. It feels good to be part of someone's process of coming out of their shell and learning to cope with these sorts of situations. I don't think that should ever be the focus of games, and I don't think we should mistake playing games for therapy. You know, I'm your games master, not your psychiatrist. Hosts of games don't get absolute power. It's all moderated by the rules and what the players want to do and what they will tolerate and what you will tolerate. It's more like you're a conductor in a chaotic, semi-improvised symphony, or for a jazz band who don't really have much need of one. You're there to keep the beat, at least, guide the melody, and make sure that everything kind of stays on track. It appeals to those of us who like to organise chaos, who get a kick out of building structure but are comfortable with improvisation. Of course, it also appeals to our sadism, but that's just a fringe benefit. And then there's those penny drop moments. Those are the ones I really treasure. The ones where your players finally realise that the creepy old woman who gave them a quest 5 sessions ago was the villain the whole time, or that the scent of jasmine is a subtle clue you've given that they're dealing with the undead, or maybe they figure out the big twist you've been weaving in since the beginning and their jaws hit the table when it finally makes sense to them. That kind of payoff, watching those light bulbs go on above people's heads, it's worth every sleepless night of planning and every missed opportunity when you get those moments. Games are an excuse to socialise, to bring people together, and that controlled environment and that level of expectation makes it all a little bit easier and more motivating. And those penny drop moments, they're like the ultimate reward for all of your hard work, a flood of brain chemistry that will leave you smirking and very self-satisfied. Community has become a dirty fucking word in the TTRPG sphere, but really all it means is people who share a common interest and participation in it. People have taken it to mean more than that and used it as a sort of social bludgeon to try and force people into a sort of conformity, but it doesn't have to have a negative connotation. And we don't always associate this with tabletop games, but maybe we should. Social bonding is a very real aspect of it. Doing things together, side by side, brings people together. A lot of masters of ceremonies of games, myself included, find something deeply satisfying about creating these shared experiences and stories, and the way in which they bring people together across all kinds of lines. Creating community. It is that bardic instinct again. You're bringing people together around a metaphorical campfire, giving them a story that hopefully they can all enjoy and talk about a long time after the dice have stopped rolling. A shared mythology, a common bond, a common experience. In our intensely atomized age, game architects often play the role of social glue. We create the setting, the stakes, the stories, and the structure that lets players come together around a table and share in something a little bit larger than themselves, cooperating towards a mutual end. It's low investment, it's intimate, it's personal, and it's a very old form of storytelling that is an alternative to mass media, which has increasingly become banal dross and retreads. You can make something new. You can make something that uniquely appeals to you and your little community. And you get to watch friendships form around it, inside jokes to develop, and memorable stories to unfold. It's incredibly rewarding to be the linchpin of such a group. And once you've seen players at your table connect on that level, forming friendships, even relationships, it's hard not to crave creating that experience again and again, and watching those bonds form and strengthen over time. In an age as atomized and divided as we find ourselves now, these groups of friends, not unlike the adventurers they play, these can become havens, shelters, and fellowships, for want of a better term, that look after each other, even after the books are put back on the shelf. You fought a dragon side by side, why not fight an eviction side by side? You know? That's something I don't think we value or talk about enough. Games are a great motivation engine and a great driver of self-improvement, even without really trying. Being a good game moderator isn't just about running the game, it's also about pushing yourself, improving yourself, lifelong learning, which might turn some people off, but I think it's a positive. It's about experimenting. You're constantly learning new things, even without really trying necessarily. New rules, implications of rules, how rules interact with each other, new narrative techniques, history, story structure, vocabulary, the many different forms of medieval polearms, thank you Gary, new ways to handle the absolute chaos that your players bring to the table each week, how to make game notes for guided improvisation rather than railroading your players in one direction. Gamification is still a very hot word in the business sphere, but we've been using gamification for maths, English, history, and random bullshit since the 1970s. Yeah, it takes a week of dull business seminars in a cheap hotel function room for these people to imitate even 1,000th of our power. For a lot of us, that is part of the fun, this lifelong learning, this grinding of our narrative skills, our ability to describe and mesmerize and hold the attention of a group. A hell of a lot of successful science fiction, fantasy, and horror writers have gaming experience too, China Mayville being a rather prominent one. Custodians of games masters, are always improving their craft, whether it's figuring out how to do a halfway decent character voice, or coming up with a unique twist on the tired goblin ambush. Every session is a chance to get just a little bit better, to build a little bit more confidence. And sometimes you even get into that perfect flow state with your group where everything just clicks into place. Many of these skills and techniques are even transferable, and when you've cracked one, other people will want to learn, further fostering that sense of community and connection. It can make you more confident in your public speaking, it can improve your writing, it can do all kinds of things, because it's so self-motivating. It's kind of like working out, except instead of muscles, you're flexing your improv and your storytelling skills, learning the power of language, the different subtle inflections of synonyms for the same thing, public speaking with less erring and umming and unnecessary pauses. And instead of a gym, you've got a bunch of nerds staring at you, instead of staring at you in yoga pants, expecting magic. No pressure at all whatsoever. But the point is, it is still rewarding in the act itself and in the way that it can improve you and your skills as a person. There is a more epic side to the rewards that you might glean from gaming, and it is pretty epic. Leaving a legacy. When you run a campaign, especially a long one or a big one for multiple groups or a LARP, you're creating memories and personal mythology for that group. Things that will stick with people for years, decades, even a lifetime. It's the sort of thing they'll end up talking about over beers or remember fondly or write blog posts about. It's like a kind of storytelling immortality on a smaller scale that will make you and the stories you've woven remembered fondly far into the future. We're building legends at the table. Alright, maybe on a smaller scale than the Bards or Scalds or Hollywood or, God help us, Kevin J. Anderson. But there are legends all the same. And if you do ever run a big LARP, these can be memories for hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of people. And there's a beautiful giving aspect to being the one who gets to provide the escapism to others, the solace, the place of comfort, a place of adventure for others. Games used to be a haven from bullying and social ostracism. Life can be pretty grim, no pun intended. The chance to give people even just a few hours of joy, immersion and escapism from that regular grind of existence in a fantasy world where their actions can matter and where they can feel more fulfilled when they do things by proxy. Yeah, that's a gift. And it's something that can inspire people in their real lives to make changes, to chase after that idea that they can be agents in their real life, rather than just passive victims of the whole thing. It's something that overseers are in a unique position to offer. People come back to the table week after week, month after month, because it's a place where they can forget about their life for a while, where the impotence of their position in their real life is replaced by agency and a sense that they can do something. And if you're the one crafting that world, well, you get to be the wizard behind the curtain, making all of that magic happen. You know, giving them a heart or a brain or whatever else. That's the rush, even if it's just for a short time. So then, at the end of all that exploration, why? Why do people choose to be Fate Weavers? It's a mix of creativity, controlled social situations, camaraderie, challenge, maybe even a little bit of vanity, opportunity for self-improvement, the pleasure of seeing other people having fun. Yeah, we are the modern bards, the skalds, the shaman. We are the ones who guide the spirit quest. We're small gods, creating worlds and characters, and sometimes just rolling with the absolute madness of our players as they throw God knows what at us. For those of us who love it, there is nothing quite like it, and we often can't go back to being a mere player. I'm not going to tell you that it isn't challenging, difficult, frustrating, and there's only so much forced aggrandizement that I can stomach, but it is rewarding And I believe as a whole, as a hobby, it's important. And the only way to get better at it is to do it, and to do it more. I've probably clocked well over the requisite 10,000 hours to master a skill, and I'm frequently upset, frustrated, or annoyed at how things go at the table. But when it does go right, there is nothing quite like it, and it makes it all worth it. That high, when it comes, punches right through my depression, disabilities, makes me feel good, accomplished, proud, special, valued. And so it is worth the pain and the struggle and the work and the graft, and it's not a waste of time for a whole host of reasons. So pick up the fucking book and give it a go, and stick at it, even if it's not perfect the first time. There is an ineffable something that we as human beings bring to the table on this small scale, creating tailored stories for our friends and acquaintances. It's something both ancient and modern at the same time. It is worth it, even if it does ruin you for being a player. You know, we need more people running more games to continue expanding the hobby, or just to hold it where it is now, and not just D&D, for Christ's sake. You'll really start to become a next level games master when you learn from multiple systems, not just one, and one milieu. So next time you're around the table, maybe give your games master a little nod of respect, an extra slice of pizza. They're not just running a game, they're trying to give you a bit of escapism, a story to remember, maybe a place to belong, if only for a few hours. And they deserve to have a good time too. Thanks for watching. Do all the YouTube things, like, subscribe, etc. Most importantly of all, share. Zang.
A lapidary of wondrous stones and a bestiary of sundry creatures are two OSR resources by Neil Coates, providing you with the alchemical and magical supposed properties of stones, and a bestiary of all the strange creatures in their original interpretations in medieval lore. Available at lulu.com, drive-thru-RPG, and post-mort.com.
Now, Bob, consider this next question very carefully. What is your one purpose in life?
To explode, of course.